Ready, set, go.
Let's go.
What is up, friends?
Hey, Stephen, how are you?
I'm good, man. It's been a couple weeks. We took last month. It's so weird. I was telling you guys before we started how like doing this podcast, meeting awesome folks like yourselves on a weekly basis, just like puts me in a state of mind, supports my recovery, and just like puts me in a place that I need. It's like my refuge. It's my safe spot. And just by taking a week off, just taking one day off last Monday for Memorial Day, even though I had recorded a podcast like the Thursday before to like dump that day to give them content, I show up here Monday today, and I feel like it's been forever, right? And I go on and I do a little like pre-live stream thing with our Patreon people, the people who support us through Patreon, and they said the same thing in the comments. They were like, oh, thank God you're back on Monday night. So thank you guys for checking us out. Tonight, we have a familiar face, Mr. Bob Cummins, and you brought some friends with you.
I did.
Who'd you bring with you? Can you introduce them real quick while I quickly go up and adjust that camera?
I'd be tickled pink.
Thank you, sir.
One of the guests is Mandy Hathcock from, did I say your name? Hathcock from Haywood Pathways Center in Waynesville. And the other person is Sue Cummings, who works at Haywood Pathways Center and is also my wife.
Dangerous.
I know, I have to be on my best behavior. And yes, I'm going to behave while I'm here.
You sure?
Don't ask me any personal questions. There may be some things that she doesn't know.
I have never seen you behave, Bob.
Neither have I.
And I suspect it won't begin tonight either.
So what's going on over at Haywood Pathways? Like what? So we have like a pretty good sized audience ranging from all over the state of North Carolina and beyond. So I guess like I would just like to start off with like what is the Pathways Center? And
Well, we can start with the story of how we started. We started only about 4.5 years ago, so September of 2014. And prior to that, our sheriff had just recently gotten his office, and he walked out and he saw a couple guys sitting on the sidewalk, and he said, "What are you guys doing?" And they had just been released from the jail, and they didn't really know where they should go because the only place they had to go back to was the environment that got them in jail in the first place. And so they jokingly sort of said, "Can I go back in?" And obviously that's not an option. And so sheriff just thought, what can we do to have to be able to stop this, because we can't keep arresting our way out of this problem. It's not going to happen. And he saw next door was what used to be the Hazelwood Minimum Security Prison, and it had been empty for 7 years. And so he talked to the county commissioners, to the faith community, and everybody came together and agreed to use this for another purpose. So they actually won a nationwide Facebook voting contest, Waynesville did, which got them $50,000 grant and a visit from Ty Pennington to flip the prison. So they changed it from a place of punishment to a place of restoration and redemption. So the original goals were to feed the hungry, house the homeless, and to reduce recidivism, and that is what we do. So over the last 4.5 years, we've expanded from just offering a dinner meal and shelter to having a full-blown case management program. We have staff who work in the jail now, and we are in 2 weeks opening our shelter for moms and kids as well.
boom.
So
That's a lot going on in a short period of time.
it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? And like I think like one of the things that comes up often is like so many people can identify a need, and they're met with like one barrier, or they're out of fear of failure, or whatever the case is. It's always funding. It always circles back to money. But they tend to not like move forward with such a project, right? And so the initial beginning was winning that grant, that Facebook campaign.
It was kind of a place where it was a combination of the Open Door Ministry, the Haywood Christian Emergency Shelter, and Next Step Ministries. And the emergency shelter was held at a camp, and it was only during the cold months, and they had lost their lease there. So it was kind of like, what are we going to do this year? And between Sheriff Christopher and Nick Honorkamp, both are very much people who believe that God will make something happen, and God made it happen. I mean, out of 3,500 entries across the country, this is what won. And so here we are.
Yeah, such a need. Coming from where I come from in South Florida, homelessness is something that is easily identifiable, right? You can't miss it. However, having lived here for the last like 5 or 6 years, one of the things that I've become very aware of is it tends to be an unseen population.
Sure.
Regarding like where they are, the places that they are. Like it kind of gets like with all the tourism and the money that's in these mountains, not as much awareness is focused around those who experience homelessness. And considering like how cold it gets and the seasons and all that stuff, like there's no excuse why it shouldn't be such a priority here in these mountains, and especially like I mean, to me, like especially with the amount of money funding through tourism and things like that, like it should be something that is definitely talked about more often. You know, so how did you get in the picture?
How did I get?
Yeah, how did you get in the picture?
Well, so back in 2005, I came in to North Carolina to go to graduate school in Chapel Hill in Durham. And at that point, really felt called. I had always worked with families, but had felt called to specifically work with folks who are homeless. And so
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
So the weekend we came was the weekend of that huge ice, thunderstorm, snow, whatever. And
Whatever
it was, where everyone got stuck on the highway in Raleigh for 8 hours. And so we were touring both Duke and UNC Chapel Hill. And there were just so many people on the street. And there was one woman in particular in a poncho, and that's all she had, who was trying to stay out of the weather. And I think at that point, like I'd always worked with families in poverty, but they always had homes. And so then being right there next to people who I knew were not going to have another option tonight. And even though I ended up getting stuck in the car and sleeping on the floor and eating the flight attendant's peanut butter for dinner, like I still was safe and I still was warm. And just felt like, this is not okay for our world to have this, especially here. And especially in Chapel Hill, if you think about that. And we need to do something different with that. And so then I started doing internships, and then I ended up working at Durham Urban Ministries and working with the families, and just saw how often kids would come in and they'd be so excited to be in the shelter because their family hit the lottery and got one of the 8 rooms, There was one mom who was about 26. She had 3 little girls. And they finally got in, and they were all so excited, not just to be in the shelter, but because they got to be in the same room that their mom had been in when she was a little kid. Wow. And at that point, that's kind of a defining moment of these are cycles that continually happen, and we have an opportunity and I think a responsibility to help make it different for those kids. I mean, those kids don't have a chance. They didn't. But what can we do to put in place to help them as a community to lift them up, which only helps all of us. And so from that point forward, I worked in various shelters, and then we had a kid and wanted to be out here because that's where my mom was. Childcare is expensive. And so I got a job at ABCCM in Asheville, and then here we are. This job came open, and it's 10 minutes from my house, and it's lovely. And then I got to meet these people. So
and and that was my next question is, when did the Cummings pop into the picture? I heard an interesting story of how that introduction was made.
Yeah.
Introduction to Pathways.
Sure.
And then I would like to find out how the job came about, right?
Okay, cool. Well, let me start off with how we got involved. Sue and I had been involved in ministry in Asheville. I was the assistant director of the rescue mission downtown for several years. I then moved on, and at a point in time, about a year and a half ago, we moved from Asheville to Waynesville because Waynesville is the neatest little city ever in the world. So we got a place, and it was the weekend of Thanksgiving, 2 Thanksgivings ago, and we moved in, and then a few days after that, I was driving to work. I work for a company called Red Oak Recovery in Asheville, and I was driving into work, and I heard the Corey Valancourt story. Corey Valancourt, of course, is a reporter for Smoky Mountain News. He's one of my heroes. He's a good friend of mine, and I love Corey. But he did this story where he became homeless for a day, and walked into Waynesville looking for food. Of course, he had a story of why he was homeless and so on. He practiced this story to tell people when they asked him why he needed food and so on. And if you haven't read the story, I'll give it to you briefly. It was Thanksgiving Day. So he walks in, he goes over to the open door and begins to tell his story, and they just ignore him. And they say, well, here's some food. Come on in, have a seat. And that they serve him food. And Corey himself says he was kind of surprised. He thought he would have to give a reason as to why he was there. And he ate, and he said the food was great, and the people were nice and friendly and very caring. And then he asked about dinner, and they said, well, you just follow the train tracks. There's a place called Haywood Pathways Center. So he walks down the tracks, and for dinner, he walks in, he begins to tell his story, and they just ignore that. And they set him down, they bring him food, and they treat him like a guest would at a fine restaurant. So he tells this story about going to the place in Canton and spending a few days of finding out the services. And he and I spoke afterwards. I asked him, did you realize that the organizations helping you, that there weren't government organizations, it wasn't public funding, these were Christian organizations? And he said that he didn't expect that, and he was surprised when he found that out. But the reality is that the people who provided him food and shelter and love were Christian organizations. So after I heard that on the radio, and then I got the old copy of the Smoky Mountain News and read it, I had to. I remember coming home to Sue and just saying, "Dude, we got to get involved in this." So we contacted Haywood Pathways, and they were very quick to say yes, we could use some volunteer help. Mm-hmm. So we began. I'm with an organization called Western Carolina Orthodox Outreach, and we're an organization of Orthodox Christians from the Asheville area, and we look for things to do to help, and we began cooking once a month at Pathways and just having a blast doing it. And we met Mandy, and then we started talking about maybe a recovery group on Thursdays and so on, and I'm going to let Sue take over from here because then her part kind of comes in now.
Okay. When we first moved out to Waynesville, I was still working at Arts-Based Charter School, which is over in Swannanoa. So it was fine from West Asheville, 18 minutes, but the hour-long drive to school and back every day through Asheville was more than I wanted to do. So at the end of the school year last year, we made the decision that I was not going back. That was a very hard decision. I loved that job. So I spent most of the summer going, what am I going to do? I wish they would just hire me at Pathways. Wonder if she'll just hire me at Pathways. I can't work past that.
How long had you been volunteering at this?
We had been volunteering, we started in January and volunteered all the way through, I guess you hired me
started in July.
Okay, so she hired me in July. So I was out of work first week of June, just going, I need a job. I'm applying all sorts of places, these places I don't want to work. And the whole time I'm going, please, I just want to work at Pathways. So one day Mandy calls Bob and says, do you think Sue would work for us? And it's funny because I'm doing the exact same job I did in the public school. I'm kind of the gopher. I kind of man the phone and
She does everything.
fix lockers and clean bathrooms and herd children around.
The same thing you do at home with
Yeah,
Bob.
same thing. It's the exact same job everywhere.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. Thanks.
All night, brother.
But it's amazing watching the lives that are transformed there, and getting to be a part of that. And the people I've met there are just so amazing. I'm saying employees as well as residents. They're all so amazing, from every walk of life you can imagine. So it's just an honor to serve them.
Yeah.
And then somewhere in that same realm, we started the 12-step meeting, which I don't have a drug or alcohol addiction. But when we were looking at this, we realized that addiction goes so much deeper than that and so much further than that. So instead of I'm an alcoholic or I'm a drug addict, it's we talk about any addictive or self-destructive substance behavior or idea. So I can put my eating disorder in there. I can put dysfunctional relationships in there. We have people in there with that plus, it's a pornography addiction. It's an addiction to being critical of other people.
Critical of yourself.
Yeah. So it's amazing how far-reaching just changing the words to that have been, and the group that is building around us.
Yeah.
So
Prior to this 12-step program, were there other recovery type programs in?
Well, not on campus. So we partner a lot with Meridian, who are great partners, and they come and pick people up every day and they bring them back, which solves a big transportation issue to get services. But one of the things that we have been trying to do over the last 2 years is bring in a lot more life skills sort of things. And one of those, one of our priorities was some sort of recovery group, just because the majority of the people who are staying with us have issues in that area. And when they came with this proposal, with this program, we were just excited about it because we didn't have that, and it wasn't AA and it wasn't NA, so it didn't exclude or include only certain people. And it's right there. So people already knew Sue, so the trust piece was there. So it wasn't like, well, who's going to tell me about what? So they were the first.
This program, was that something that you guys kind of developed on your own?
No, not at all.
Okay.
If I can tell you about it, it's called the 12 Steps Following the Ancient Christian Path. My wife and I are both Orthodox Christians, and the Orthodox Church, as the oldest form of Christianity, we would feel has just so much wisdom and so much love and so much truth in it that we wanted to introduce that. And there's a priest out of Missouri, Father Paisius Olchel, who for years and years headed up a street ministry that was Orthodox based, but based on love and acceptance and caring, and doing the basics of feeding people and loving people and helping people. So he developed the 12 Steps Following the Ancient Christian Path. And it's the same idea of the 12 steps of AA and NA. And I'm an AA NA guy from way back. I'm in recovery and have been involved in the 12 steps for years. But there's a difference. There are differences in how Father Paisius took the 12 steps of AA and NA and made them orthodox. And with each step, there's specific readings, either from the scriptures or from the church councils or the Holy Fathers or monks, what we call the Desert Fathers, and there are steps and writings and readings that are pertinent to recovery. And we're beginning our fourth set of 12 steps. So we've been doing
third set.
beginning fourth, I'm sure. Okay,
Here we go.
She knows. Okay, Sue knows. So we're beginning our third or fourth step or fourth set.
Smooth, brother, smooth.
Good job. Good job.
Of
You had
12.
to turn right to get here. Yeah, who got lost?
Yes. Oh, yes, dear. Yes, dear. So
Good job.
yes. So we're beginning. Yes.
A next round.
As they say in AA, and my wife had become unmanageable. We've been a bit powerless to our addiction. Our wives have become unmanageable. So anyway,
at what point in your life did you get involved with the Orthodox Church, and like how did that appeal to you? Both.
okay, cool. Well, and again, if I can go back, the Eastern Orthodox Church, and people are familiar with, let's say, Greek Orthodox or Russian Orthodox.
I'm not familiar with any of it.
Okay, it's all the same. You have the Greek Fest, there's always the
Yeah,
Greek
yeah, yeah.
Fest, okay. So the Orthodox Church is the oldest form of Christianity, and it comes out of the East, obviously, because Jesus came out of the East. He didn't come from New Jersey or
He didn't have a Boston
or
accent?
Florida, no Boston accent, and so on. But the Orthodox Church is the ancient church that is as old as Pentecost and as new as this morning. So I've been involved in ministry and in Protestantism for years. After I got sober, actually, it was through a very profound Christian experience, and then not being or being someone who has to find the original and do things 100%.
200.
I'm so glad that she's here tonight.
It's just the way I am. I was in college. I'm a late bloomer because instead of going to school, I did drugs. And then finally, when I went back to college years later, I was doing a senior thesis on the underground Christian heavy metal, death metal, rock and roll, rock and roll culture. And
You did a whole podcast on that.
oh yeah, it was heck yeah. So actually, there's a band called Luxury that's based out of North Carolina, a real heavy metal rock and roll band, and like 3 of the members are now Orthodox priests.
Okay.
So that's another story though. But I got introduced. I was talking with a guy who was fronting this band called 8 Ball Cholos, which was it's a death metal Christian band, and he said, "Yeah, man." His name is Burrito. He said, "Yeah, get in touch with these people out in California." So I did, and it turns out it was an Orthodox monastery, and these were monks. And they began sending me information, and at that point, Father John Marlar was kind of heading it up, and he sent me all this info about Orthodoxy, and it's like, dude, this is hardcore. This is the real thing. But then, of course, in my mind, it was like, it's the real thing. It's hardcore. It's okay for them, but not me, because I want to do things my way. And then at some point, I think that God revealed that if this is the real thing, then I need to be doing it for my own salvation, my own recovery. So for me, that was about 22 years ago, and I did what I had to do to become an Orthodox Christian, and then
All through the music.
that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. No, no.
Through the music.
Yeah,
That's
it.
beautiful, man.
Of course, the music in the Orthodox Church is usually Greek or Byzantine or Kievan chant, so it's not. They don't actually do heavy metal in the church. What's called the liturgy, the liturgia. So you're just riding this, aren't you, Stephen? All right? Thanks, man. Love you, pal.
So the 12-step group is, you said, worked through the 12 steps 3 to possibly 4 times, yet to be determined. Is it like a closed group, or are they like, can people kind of like say?
It is a closed group.
Okay.
It's for our residents. We do have residents who have been a part of the group who have now moved into their own apartments, and they're welcome
That's
to come
what
back
I
and
got.
join
That's what
the
I was
group.
going at. Okay.
But outside, no, because part of it is supporting the group there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And there's still a stigma to being in a homeless shelter. So, you call, you ask for Bob if he's there, and I say, I can neither deny or confirm that he's a resident here. But if you want to give me a message, if I see this person, I might pass it on. So for that reason, we really want to keep it our residents, because they need that.
Anonymity piece. Yeah. So what's the day-to-day operations like at Pathways?
My job. Or
Just
others'
in
job?
general,
Crazy.
overall
How does it work?
operations. Yeah. How does it work?
So we have 2 dorms right now, about to have 3, and people come in, and once they're if they're in our program, they have a bed, they have a locker, they can store their stuff. It's not like leaving and taking everything with you. Like it can be your home base. Monday through Friday, our dorms close at 8:30 in the morning, and that's just to encourage people to go out and do the things that they need to do. But At this point, our campus is open all the time, and we have an employment specialist who is there Monday through Friday. And so there's Wi-Fi, there's food, there's TV, there's laundry. So if people are just coming out of addiction, or they're just coming out of jail, it's a safe place to be, to where you're not wandering the streets right where what got you in trouble. So most of our folks, there's usually only about 10 people there at this point during the day, give or take, because most people are going to their classes. We have 60% of our folks are employed. And 90% of those who are employed are working full time. A lot of them with benefits that our own employees don't have. True. But it's just great, because there's a lot of people who've never had a good job. There's a lot of people who've never had benefits. We've had several people come back and say, "Look at my insurance card. I don't even know what you do with this."
I haven't had one in 5 or 6 years.
And it's fun to watch that. And so part of what they do when they're staying with us is everybody has a chore. We really try to make it a community. Like, you're here to help each other. There's expectations, there's guidelines, there's a whole rule book and all this stuff, because you have to kind of control some things, because we have between 40 and 60 people there a night. We're about to have up to 100 once we open the dorm for moms and kids. So people are meeting with their case manager. We recognize that everybody is their own creation, their own past, their own future. And so we do a person-centered plan where we look at income, housing, stability, life skills, social support, and spirituality, because we believe that everybody has to have all 6 of those things to function in this world, and you have to have them together, because if your mental health is up and down, you're not going to be able to maintain your job and your housing, and then you'll be right back. So our goal for everything that we do is to really look at what is the trauma that happened, what are we doing, and how do we help people break those cycles so that we don't see them over and over again, so they're not bringing their kids back later,
Celebrating that they're back where their parents were.
Yeah.
What is a typical stay? Like, how many days,
How long?
weeks, how long? Yeah.
People can stay for up to 6 months. Probably the average is about 3 to 4 months that people will stay, but that's kind of misleading, because it takes into account the people who stay for a night or two just to get a shower, and then the people who stay and they work really hard and they save $5,000 and they're working 2 jobs, but it takes them 8 months to find housing because there isn't anything that's affordable and quality. So it's kind of in between.
Yeah. This model that you Pathways has kind of like rolled out, is that something that they developed on their own, or is that something that's being used in other places?
It's kind of a conglomeration of all the things I've done in other places that worked.
Okay. So
Honestly.
you had a lot to do with the
Yes.
development of.
Yeah, so Pathways was at an interesting place when I came on. We were at a place where it had been solely ministry based, and it was about, let's meet basic needs. Let's feed people, let's get them safe, let's get them shelter, and let them know that Jesus loves them, and that is fabulous. But then we were at that place of how do we help people really transform? Like, we can bring in all the love, and we love Jesus, and this is true, and Jesus is our ultimate transformer, but then there's the realities of the world we live in, and you have to have a job, and that's just how it works. And so that's at the point 2 years ago, we brought in a case manager, and we started putting the programs into place. And at that point, we've seen our success rates in things like about 50 to 60% of the people leave us to move into housing or to live with their families. And we have that employment rate. We have 85% of the people have income of some sort. And we're able to really help people move forward. And our goal in all of it is 6 months, if you stay that long, is not very long in your span of your life.
No.
At all. And it's certainly not long enough to deal with all the traumas that got you to where you are. But it is an opportunity to connect you with all the different people in the world, with the churches, with the volunteer groups, with the life skills classes, so that hopefully we can bring positive community into someone's life, so when they leave us, they have those resources and they have other options besides going back to what got them there in the first place.
Yeah. That's beautiful. What about the relationship between like the Orthodox Church and stuff that you guys do, and the new stuff that's coming down the pipe? Like,
Yeah.
how is that going to be integrated or work with, say, residents of the Pathway Center, and then those that move on into permanent housing.
Do you want me to take that one?
Go ahead.
Okay. But interesting you would ask that, because as of this past Wednesday, Sue and I and two other people who are involved, my godson, Aiden, who's a licensed professional counselor in Canton, he and his wife have been banded together, and we received a visit from Archbishop Daniel of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church USA and Father Anthony Perkins. So we've received now the official blessing to start a church in Waynesville. So we are officially starting Holy Resurrection Orthodox Church. And one of the neat things that we really want to happen is that we purposely found a place to begin meeting that's close to Pathways. So it's going to be a place that's very accessible to the people in Pathways Center, people who we form relationships with in the 12-step group will be able to continue, not just the relationship, but also their own recovery at Holy Resurrection. And we're also, one of our goals, one of the things we're hoping for, cultivating and praying for, is to find a group of people who want to embrace Orthodoxy, which, by the way, is the fastest growing Christian denomination in America now.
You heard that, Kayla?
There you love you, Kayla. All right. And I mean, around the country, it's happening.
It's because the metal music.
It's
Is that why?
yeah,
Music.
yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
But it's actually, since you brought it up, it's because Orthodoxy is 2,000 years old. It's timeless, and Orthodoxy doesn't change. There's a joke. How many Orthodox does it take to change a light bulb? All right, change. We don't change anything. So
How many times you heard that one?
No comment.
this week, right? So when people are in uncertain cultures and times and sociology like we have in America now, people grasp for something that's stable, something that's been there, that's unchanging. All right, you're not getting it from the Republicans, the Democrats, the Libertarians. All right, but then people who are looking for spiritual things that don't change, something that's stable, that's
okay.
orthodoxy.
It's okay.
So that's why people are leaning toward the Orthodox Church. So our hope is that the people will come into Holy Resurrection and feel love, feel joy, feel peace, feel healing. The Orthodox Church, you'll often hear the church say we're a hospital for sick people, and we're not a courtroom full of judges. We're a hospital full of doctors and nurses. And in Orthodoxy, the goal is to heal those things that are plaguing us, whether it's addiction or loneliness or sadness or low self-esteem or a lack of an ability to hold a spiritual life. And the church loves and accepts. But also, I want to kind of make clear that there are some churches that try and either stereotype or pigeonhole, like you'll have hippie churches or cowboy churches or heavy metal church, whatever. Yeah. And that's not what we're doing. We're not trying to do a street people church. We're doing an Orthodox church, but there's going to be this overall feeling of anybody's welcome. Anybody who's going to come in there is going to feel the love of Jesus Christ. They're going to feel the timelessness of Orthodoxy, and they're going to feel acceptance. And then those who choose to continue on with the healing will be welcome to participate in the Orthodox life. So yeah, that's how we're interfacing. We're always going to be, God willing, we're always going to be close to Pathways. Always going to be accessible to what Jesus called the least of these, those who are lost, those who are poor, those who need resources. So that's our goal.
Yeah. For somebody that's not familiar with this type of belief system or study, but is involved in the church, like how would you suggest somebody like kind of get their feet wet, or where would they start?
You want to handle that? I'm just putting you on the spot because
Okay.
you're smarter than I am.
Visit.
Visit, come hang
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
embrace some of that love that
Yeah.
Bob's talking about.
Yeah. I don't, one of the things that I loved when I came into Orthodoxy is the very firm belief that there's no grounds or basis for us to say that any other belief system, Christian or non-Christian, is not going to get you to God. I cannot judge whether you're Baptist or Buddhist. I cannot say, oh, that's right, that's wrong. Yeah, I cannot do that. I can't even say that this is the only truth. Yeah, I can't do that. I can say this is the path that has drawn me closest to God. And because of that lack of condemning that I had experienced in many other places, that's what really drew me to the Orthodox Church. And I think that's honestly what drew me to working at Pathways too, although it is not an Orthodox organization.
Yeah.
It's, I think every church in Haywood County is represented in that place, and it's amazing and beautiful. And it's because nobody is judged.
Yeah.
Everybody is completely loved and accepted. And so,
Regardless of where you come from or what you're.
or even what
Yeah.
you believe.
Yeah.
You do not even have to be a Christian to be it at Pathways. I mean, it's not, you have to go to these Bible studies. It's nothing like that. It's, we just want you to know you're loved. And that was the same receiving that I got when I came into the Orthodox Church. So the fact that there is no condemning, and I guess that's why I feel so safe in both of these places.
That's one of the things, like what I'm hearing is one of the things that appealed me to Buddhist practice and spiritual practice as a whole, was the fact that it was one of those things where it's kind of like, give it a try and see what works, right? Put in the effort and experience some of the results, and don't necessarily go into it with a sense of like blind faith, more of a verified faith. Like, I do this and these are the results.
You do the 12 steps, you recover.
Boom.
Get right, exactly. The promises come true.
Yes.
The promises come true.
Yeah. In the Orthodox Church, one thing that struck me, and one reason I think that it's continuing to grow, is that every Orthodox church in the world, by and large, believes the same thing. If you go to any Orthodox church in the world for the last 1,500 years, on a Sunday morning, they do the same liturgy, the liturgy of St. John Chrysostom. And
Consistency.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Consistency.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Regardless of-
Absolutely. And the difference is, if you go into a Greek church, they'll chant Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison. If you go to the Russian church, they chant the Gospodi Pomilo. If you go to the American church, it's Lord have mercy. But it's the same. I went to a Slavonic Russian Orthodox monastery up in upstate New York. And the whole liturgy, the 2-hour liturgy, was done in Church Slavonic. But I knew exactly what was happening, exactly what was being said, because it's the same liturgy worldwide. As I knew the liturgy in English, I knew what was happening in Church Slavonic. And so, yeah, you're right, there's that consistency. And with that consistency is going to come, in our case, the love, the joy, the peace, the real healing, not just an emotional, high, yada, 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 that then goes away after the high goes away. It's going to be, Orthodoxy is this deep.
Consistent.
It's consistent, and yeah, it focuses on what we call the nous, which is, this deep spirit that isn't based on emotion or circumstances.
Yeah. I'd like to talk a little bit about the life skills training and stuff that you kind of touched on a little bit, and like what that process is like, and identifying like potential employers and things like that. Like, do you guys does your case manager or somebody like go out and build relationships with employers, or are you just more like teaching the skills and allowing the individuals to kind of go out and find their own?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
So when we got a grant from the state to help to address the opioid crisis, which allowed us to have some staff in the jail, but it also allowed us to have our employment specialist. And he is also a deacon at the Grace Episcopal Church in town. But he came to us, so he's an interesting mix of great spirituality, but also incredible employment skills. He'd worked for 15 years prior with folks with mental health issues, helping them find jobs and stay on jobs. And so what he's been able to bring to the table is he can meet with people, hear their story, and if you met him, you'd want to tell him everything, and that's what happens.
Yes.
So then he can do like a pre-employment screening, and he helps people apply for jobs that they would be most likely to be successful at.
Like meaningful jobs, like things that they're interested in.
Yeah,
and
well, and
or-
for example, we have somebody who can't be around a whole bunch of people at one time. So customer service, Bojangles, not a great idea, but it's what's available and what's down the street. So instead what he's done is he has helped them go through the application process for HVO, which is Haywood Vocational Opportunities. That requires that that person interact with maybe 4 other people. And they've done an amazing job. Still has the job, has working full-time, has benefits, can walk to work, has a living wage, all those sorts of things. And
Had
so-
you plugged that dude into Bojangles and he'd have been out of there 2 weeks
Exactly.
later.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think before we had this person, we would work to help people identify how to apply for jobs and stuff. We'd use interns for help and things. But he's really brought a specialization that we didn't have before, and we're so lucky to have. So in that respect, he's very much doing that. We've brought in folks to do other kinds of life skills. We partner with the Zacchaeus Group in town, and they're a nonprofit that helps people who are middle to low to no income help to manage their funds. So they come in once a month, and everybody's required during their stay with us to at least go to that. And if people are interested, they'll offer continuing one-on-one sessions at no charge. A lot of people, everyone hates the fact that they have to go, but then they love it.
Until they leave.
And then they're like,
"I
I want to go, I want to go. So we have a Renting 101 curriculum ready. We just need a facilitator. That is just about how do you have a lease? How can you be a good neighbor? How can you save on your utilities? What are your rights and responsibilities of being a tenant, and what does that look like? And just the basic of
That's so
you
valuable, man.
and you should have a lease. I mean, so many people just don't have a lease. We have art classes that come in. We have NAMI comes in twice a month and does a support group for us. We have Bible studies. We have Sue and Bob's group. And at this point, I think that's all we have, but we're always
We're
open
working on more.
Yeah.
to bringing that stuff in.
What about like mental health providers, like connecting them with?
Meridian's amazing. Like I said, they'll come in and pick people up. We're actually working with them to have one of their kiosks delivered to Pathways, and it'll stay there so that people can sit down in confidentiality, in a confidential situation, to be able to do a screening on themselves and then make the appointment through VIA and get all connected with that. So that'll help not only our residents, but also those folks who come in for dinner who don't stay with us, but
It's
who also
still
need some
accessible
help.
to them.
Exactly.
Yeah. They got one of those at the library, and it's
Yeah.
like super cool seeing that thing over there.
Yeah.
If I can plug something really quick.
Plug away, my brother.
When Archbishop Daniel came here last week, he goes all around the world visiting places, spends lots of time in Ukraine, all around Europe and so on. He spent a couple hours with Pathways, and he was amazed at what's happening out there. And again, this is a very, very experienced guy.
Yeah.
And he was just gaga about Pathways. Oh, Pathways is wonderful. Oh, check out the show. I love it here. He was so happy to be there. And he
I'm going to
toured-
send him a copy of that.
Yeah, you should do that.
He will laugh.
He will. They're very gregarious, just loving guy. But he loved Pathways. And then on the Ukrainian Orthodox Church USA website, he put big picture and this, I mean, what would have been like a 5-page write-up about how wonderful Pathways was and what all they were doing. So like the whole Ukrainian Orthodox Church USA and in Ukraine now have access to the story of Pathways.
Yeah. I'm just as amazed in the last like 52 minutes that we've been talking. when you first sat down, you asked me, what do I know about Pathways? And I said very little, right? And I've, lived in not far, 30 minutes away for the last 5 or 6 years and worked with many individuals experiencing substance use disorders and mental health disorders. And I'm just very unfamiliar with it. And so I guess my question is like, why? Like, what are there barriers? Like, why don't I like,
Why don't you know?
yeah, why isn't like everybody in this community just like giving you guys all kinds of love? Like,
I think part of it is just getting out to tell the story.
yeah.
And I think, we're kind of a baby organization. We're only 4.5. So we're kind of a toddler.
But
We're
like I
just,
said at the
stumbling
beginning,
around.
how much you've accomplished in those 4.5 years.
And I think we're just at a point, we did a lot of infrastructure building here for a long time. And I think we're finally at a place where there's the space to go out and tell the story. And, our 3 goals were to feed the hungry, house the homeless, and reduce recidivism. And now we've been here long enough that we can really tell that story.
It's measurable now,
Yeah,
too.
Yes.
absolutely. We've been keeping records now, and now there's trends. And, it's a really powerful story at this point because it's a good story to begin with, but now I can tell you the results of that story. And it's exciting, and it's continuing.
Tell me some results of the story.
Some results of the story. So in terms of feeding the hungry, we are a partner with Manna, which they were gracious to include us on a grant that they wrote, which allowed us to get a refrigerated van. And so we get to pick up from our new Publix 5 days a week, which means 5 days a week we're getting 300 to 800 pounds of food. That means that our food costs are very,
Thank you,
very low.
Publix.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But also that means that we have more meat than will fit in our freezer and more produce than we could ever use. So we're working with Haywood Christian Ministries and Open Door and the
Haywood
Gleaners and the Grace Episcopal Ministry, food pantry, so that some of that stuff that we're not going to be able to use, or like the one Cornish game hen that won't feed 70 people, it can go in a food box and get out to the people who really need that food. So we're partnering with them. And last year we served over 40,000 meals. When we look at the homeless, housing the homeless, last year we served 314 people, and that's up from 243 the year before. We provided over 17,000 nights of shelter, which is double.
Go ahead and say that number one more time, please.
Over 17,000 nights of shelter. That's almost twice what we did the year before that. We typically have between 40 and 60 people who are staying with us every single night. And I've told you about the employment and about where people are going, but we also have, we are really excited that we are going to open a family shelter in 3 weeks, and we're going to have up to 10 moms with their kids, so up to 36 people who can stay there for the same program that we do with our men and women. And there is not a shelter for homeless families in Haywood County. So we're very, very excited about that. And then when you look at the recidivism piece, we've always had an informal relationship with the Sheriff's Department, and have helped a lot with the recidivism in that respect. But since we've been able to put our staff in the jail, so their office is in the booking department, so they literally see everyone who goes in and out. They're running groups in there, evidence-based practice, criminal and addictive thinking. They're doing coping skills groups. They're meeting with people, and their goal is to help folks when they get to their release date to have a plan for inpatient treatment, outpatient treatment, or some sort of safe housing. But one of the things they're also doing is advocating with some of the attorneys and with law enforcement so that the option is on the table of, for some people, going to treatment, court-ordered treatment, and completing it instead of X number of days, years, months in prison. And that didn't exist before.
Is that part of the diversion program? Or is that a separate piece?
No, it's a separate thing. And then what that has meant for the recidivism rate is that in 2018, 75% of the women and 52% of the men who left the jail and came to us have not returned to jail.
Dude.
That's phenomenal. I've worked
Yeah.
in social work for years. That's phenomenal statistics.
Have any other neighboring counties or anybody contacted you guys for this to like this type of model, like there has to be, with those types of numbers, there has to be interest
Yeah,
in.
I think Jackson County has asked
Yeah.
some questions. We're the only shelter between here and Murphy.
Yeah.
So there's not really, at this point, anybody out there who's that I know of, I should
Yeah.
say, who's doing it that way. We have had some folks from Jackson call and ask.
It's just like logical progression to just like roll something out nationwide. Like, I mean,
It takes so much support, though.
yeah.
It really does.
And every bit of our income is, and we're not federally funded.
Yeah, and I'd
we're
like
not,
to talk, let's talk about that a little
Yeah.
bit, because the community is
100%.
the one that's driving it.
Right.
It is. Haywood Pathways is very unique, and I think Haywood County is really unique in that people see a need and they do come together and say, we got to fix this because this is not working. And so Pathways has always been very much a community project. If you look at our new building, for example, we have no debt on that building at all, thanks to the fact that we had one grant and the remaining funds all came from the community, whether that's business, individuals, or churches.
Yeah, do just like private fundraisers throughout the year kind of stuff.
Oh, my favorite part of that is when all the funding was done for the building, somebody came in and said, well, what else can I do? I said, you want to decorate a bedroom?
And they did.
And not only did they, but
Every
she
room.
called her best friends and called us the next day and said, we're going to take 8 of the 10 bedrooms and we're competing and mine's going to be the best. 'Cause
showed
my
up.
interior decorator's the best. These rooms are gorgeous.
Show up a couple gallons of paint and a bunch of stuff.
Oh my goodness, it's glorious. And
Yeah.
then we ran out of bedrooms, and so we had people adopt the bathrooms and the storage rooms, and it is amazing. So we haven't had to pay to even decorate.
Yeah.
It's
And that's how Pathways started too.
Well, and it just goes to show like the level of community support kind of starts with leadership, right? And Sheriff Christopher kind of identifying
Yes.
that on such a scale, and then the community kind of rallying behind his vision to roll
Yeah.
something like this out, and then it be so well received, and then directly impact the community in such a positive way.
Yeah.
and it keeps going, because now that the new dorm's done, I have a group that said, well, we need to paint the dining room. It's looking old and shabby. So
We're circling back.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
starting
I've
over.
already got people saying, well, let's fix this and let's fix that. And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And the residents join in. I had a resident come to me today and said, I saw that the paint was donated. Can I start painting the dining room now?
Wow.
And we got like 5 guys that want to go paint.
Got a crew.
So they know that they're part of this community and that this community loves them, because it's evidence in everything that happens. So,
It's fair to say, I think, that any, and I don't want to speak for Mandy and Sue, but I think it's fair to say that any group, church group, civic group, any club, whatever, that wants to in some way give back to others can find something to do at Pathways, whether it's painting or fixing this or doing that or decorating this or spreading mulch or something. Any group in this area or not in this area that wants to get involved one time or 10 times or every month or whatever, any group can find stuff to do.
Especially like if you're looking for some sort of service type work, you're going to want to do it at a place that's making such an impact in the community, right? And that produces such results, right? And then that full circle type moment where the individuals who have come through there are now coming in and painting on the weekends or mowing the lawn
Yeah.
or whatever the case is,
Yeah.
It's like,
well, I'm going to add one more plug in there, because
Come
every
on.
single night, a different group cooks dinner. I mean,
including you guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're the
Yeah, boy.
first-
35.
Yeah, we're the first Saturday of the month is our cook team, but we have 3 nights of the month that don't have a cook team.
So what you're saying is you're looking for there are opportunities to
There
cook
are
some meals.
opportunities, and the food's all there. So you go in and go, oh, I want all of that meat, and Deb will set it aside for you. And oh, and we're going to do those veggies. And so you get to come shopping in our freezer and refrigerator. You don't purchase anything; it's there.
Just that's therapeutic in
Yeah.
itself. Having access
and then you
to
get
that,
to
and then
create
yeah,
a meal. It's
yeah.
so much
For
fun.
About 60 residents, you said, per
Not
night. So you're
currently right
cooking
now.
for about that many as well.
This past Saturday, we had breakfast for dinner. We had biscuits made by Haley, the bodacious biscuit baker. We had sausage, bacon. I made sausage gravy, pancakes, eggs.
And fruit salad.
And fruit salad. All right. It's like being on one of those TV shows on the Food Network where you kind of, you have all these ingredients and your group
You
says,
got an hour and a half. You got to
You have
get this
an hour
done.
and a
All
half.
right, countdown.
It is so fun.
We had 15 people
Yeah.
cooking on Saturday.
So we have a mutual friend who also works there.
Yes.
Caleb.
Caleb.
Caleb
I love Caleb.
McCoy.
That's my buddy.
I would like for one of you to tell me the funniest thing that Caleb's ever done at Pathways.
Oh, Lord.
That's
Do you have one?
I know there is. I know he was over there trying to cook a meal sometime around the
I
holidays.
don't know if he's ever tried.
They were there serving.
They did.
They
served
did
on
serve. I don't know
Christmas.
if he ever cooked.
No,
I don't know.
I told him I would get some dirt on him when I talked to him on the phone tonight. I know there's something.
I will say this about Caleb, and it's not a funny story, but it's to appreciate him. He has a gift to be able to talk to those folks that no one else will talk to, and to be able to help at least, the follow through on their part. Who knows what really happens, right? But he's able to talk to folks and get them to agree to try detox, to try treatment, and even if they say no, they know that they are cared about by him. And they are people who generally are in the process of being banned from us just because they need more than we can provide at this point.
He's still willing to put in
He
that
absolutely.
extra legwork, even outside. Sounds like outside the scope of
Yes.
what's
And
going on.
I think everyone who works there does that, but he just has a special gift for reaching the people who seem to be more lost than others.
Yes.
Relating to them. Sounds like an Orthodox.
Wait, what happened?
Waiting to happen. Right.
Waiting to happen.
Yeah.
What I know about Caleb is that for the year and a half that we've worked together on this podcast and other projects in the community is that, and I said this at his wedding, is that two different people from two different walks of life, two different belief systems, two different pathways to recovery can see each other and work with each other and love each other in the same way that you guys described. And he's a man that if he says he's going to do something, he always follows through.
Yep.
Right? He always holds up to his end of the bargain. If he tells me he's going to pick me up on Tuesday, he's going to pick me up on Tuesday. He might be a half hour late, so he's going to pick me up on Tuesday.
But he'll be there, right?
He will be there.
He's on Cherokee time, always.
Yeah, he will be there. And that's why I love him. But there's never been any type of judgment. There's never been any type of, anything other than unconditional love, regardless of what happens. I can always be myself around him, regardless of where we come from, regardless of how we choose to live our lives differently. I don't have to hide anything. I don't have to be a different person. And I try to be that way everywhere I go, but that's what I love about him. Man, I was looking for something.
Yeah.
No, I don't have any dirt.
It'll come. It'll come. This family unit that's getting ready to open up, how did that come to life? And where did it start? I mean, obviously you saw a need, right?
That's her baby.
Is it?
So Pathways always was going to provide shelter for families in some form or fashion. That was a goal from the beginning, before me, for sure. And then we were trying, when I came on board a couple years ago, we were trying to figure out what exactly that looked like. And my experience primarily has been with families and family shelters and transitional housing and things like that. And so really and truly we went with what are the resources we have, what has worked best in other places, what could we do here, and finally just came down to we provide emergency shelter. It's what we're good at, it's what we're known for, and there's a need for that in the community. And then we thought about where do we do that, and we had just enough land in the back of our little bitty space that we rent for $1 a year from the county to put this massive building, and that's about all that there's room
Yeah,
for back
there's
there.
no room around it.
But we figured, our backyard there is the sheriff's department, And so rather than try and find a place and convince all the neighbors that it's okay, because people have stereotypes, you know, and we just already have the staff there and the security there and the food there and all the services are already there. So instead of spending money trying to relocate somewhere else, we put together this plan, and we designed it for about 6 or 8 months, just to make sure it has everything the way that we want it. And then it was built, and it's a modular house. It was built in a factory, and then it was brought here, and then they had cranes, and they put it together, and it was fascinating.
Right before your very eyes.
Yeah.
Seriously,
Yeah.
yes, yes, there's videos. And you would never know that now, and it's just a good place.
So what are the screening process?
Screening
How do you get specifically for the
For the families.
Yeah.
So right now with our adults, you can pretty much walk up, and if we have a bed and you meet 3 or 4 requirements, you can come in. For the families, it's a little bit different. We want to make sure, one, that there's safety, but then also, because it's an enclosed house, we want to make sure there's a good mix of folks to the best of our ability so that everyone's successful. So what we're planning to do is, starting June 17th, we'll start taking phone calls or accepting phone calls to do phone assessments. And that just will kind of weed out who's ready and who's not. So if you're not from Haywood County, we won't be able to do that. If you're on the sex offender registry, we can't have you. If there's certain sorts of really violent charges, we won't. If you're still using, that won't work. So there's some really steadfast eligibility requirements. So that just weeds that out. Assuming a family passes that phone intake screening, then the case manager will set up a one-on-one assessment time and meet with that family, get to know them, see the kids, and then figure out who's the best placement at that time.
Yeah. Dude, that's pretty badass, man. Bob just showed me a picture of the bunk beds and stuff.
All the pictures are on our Facebook
Are
page,
they?
and the videos actually of the building
The
coming together.
construction of it. How can people, outside of service, right? How can people get involved? How can people help out? How can people donate? What do you guys need?
We need money. I mean, we always need money, right? Just to operate.
Make all checks payable to
Right.
Haywood
Yes.
Pathways Center?
Well, and I'll say this, though. If you're thinking about like I talked about the recidivism rate, to stay in the county jail, it costs $7 to $8 a night. To stay at Pathways, it costs $20 a night. And so if we can really work on this program and continue it, it can save the county and its taxpayers money in the long run, for one thing. You can donate financially. It's really helpful. We need to be able to keep the lights on and to be able to provide the services. You can do that through our website. You can do that by coming in. I think you can donate through Facebook as well. And then we have different events. So we have a quilt show luncheon that's coming up on June 15th. We have a golf tournament on July 5th. And then we're going to have our grand opening celebration for the new dorm on June 21st. So there's lots of different ways to be involved and sponsor and come and contribute. And
All that information available on your Facebook page.
Yep.
that and our website.
Haywood
yes.
Pathways Center,
Yes.
haywoodpathwayscenter.org.
Yes.
For the individuals who don't necessarily meet the requirements to stay, whether the families or just an individual, outside of Caleb McCoy gunslinging, talking them into something, what's the progression like? What's the steps? What are their options? Do you guys work with other higher level of care organizations in the community?
Well, we try. There's not a whole lot available.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the biggest challenges. But if someone's issue is unstable mental health or drug use above what we can handle, we will do everything we can to try and get mobile crisis involved, get people to balsam, to detox, to the hospital, things like that. That's really kind of the most we can do. When it comes down to families needing shelter especially, and we don't have any resources right now, we'll tell them about what's available in Buncombe County and at least try and say, here's what's available. It's not
It's tough.
nearly
Yes.
adequate, obviously. It doesn't solve the problem by any means, but we try not to leave anyone hanging.
That's the hardest part of my job because I answer the phone. And I'm the one who has to generally be the first person to say, we can't take you.
Yeah.
And that is the hardest thing to do. I know we've been working on this dorm with families, and for the past 5-6 months, it's like, no, we can't house you.
And is it because like a lot of families have heard that it's coming?
It's coming,
so
yeah.
they're calling to.
They're already calling.
Well, yes, but there's also no shelter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is nothing else.
So we're the only one, and so people will call.
Yeah, and that is heartbreaking. So, you know, the more this could be duplicated elsewhere, you know, that would be amazing.
Still blowing my mind why
Yeah.
it's not already, but
Right. But it needs to be, it has to be,
Yeah.
because we only have 98 beds.
yeah. Now you mentioned only Haywood County residents,
Right.
right? So like if there are beds available, you still limited to Haywood County residents regardless of, because you have to
We-
have that opening
Well,
for.
and we did that because part of the agreement with the county for us to move forward was we were going to take care of the issues in Haywood County first. And I think we knew that there wasn't anything available in the surrounding counties, and if we were flooded with everyone from the surrounding counties, would we have space for those who need help here? So logically, that makes sense. It is hard to reconcile sometimes with Christian values of just helping your neighbor who walks in the door.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, then also like,
you
I
know.
mean, people who are experiencing homelessness tend to not have a driver's license or
Right.
don't necessarily have a place that they call home, many transients and things
Right.
like that are just kind of like passing through. And to stumble upon such a beautiful operation, right? It's like, how do you identify residency, I guess is.
Well, and it's challenging. I mean, not
Yeah.
everybody has that,
Yeah.
you know. But people will often say, well, I've been here, I got here 3 weeks ago, in telling their story.
Mhm.
And is it 100% foolproof? No, because most of it is self-report.
Yeah,
But at the same time, we have to do what we can.
sure. Totally understandable. Where do you see this thing going, right?
Like
4
my
ye-
5-year plan.
Yeah, like, well, this, you just like blew my mind about what's happened in 4.5 years. Like, where does it end? Like, what does it?
So I think one of the next needs that we have is going to be transitional housing. The EACH program in Haywood County helps families, and so they stay with them for up to 2 years, and they still have support, and they still have case management. But we don't have that for our single adults, and we don't even really have halfway houses,
No.
I don't
Yeah,
believe.
Buncombe
And so-
County has one on every
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah.
Like,
So I think we have had a lot of folks who get to the end of their time with us, and they would be more than happy to live in a place for $400 a month and know that they're going to be drug screened all the time, because it's a place and it helps with their recovery. So I think that's one thing that in the next 5-10 years I'd love to see us go to. But the other piece of that is we serve everyone in Haywood County, but locally and geographically, it's hard to get from Canton
transportation.
to Waynesville.
Uh-huh.
And so what would it look like if there was pathways east and west, because there is a section of folks who need these same services in Canton who aren't going to get to us, not because we don't want them, but because they can't get there.
Do you have organizations providing transportation currently?
Not like a bus system.
Yeah, but not
We
even-
have Mountain Projects works a
great.
lot
Yeah, I love 'em.
for transportation, and they have a program that will help you if you're trying to get to work, and you can call and you can get an appointment for them to come pick you up for certain things. But there's not a fixed route where you can go to the bus stop at 8:30 and
yeah,
get. I mean, that doesn't exist.
But like you could use Mountain Projects to set up an appointment if you have to go to the doctor, if
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you have a job interview, that sort
Yes,
of
you
thing.
could.
One of the things I've been talking with Lori Clancy about in like this transportation deal is that we keep circling back to, like, I spend so much time in her office just like brainstorming needs in our community and stuff. And like one of the things that it just keeps circling back to is the number of churches in our community, right? They all have a van, right?
Mhm.
Large portion of most congregations tend to be a decent portion of the congregation tends to be an older, retired crowd looking for some meaning in their lives, right? Why can't we like band together with some of these churches and like provide some meaning to those elderly, by and I don't know, probably liability is a major issue with this thing, but you know what I mean, insurance and all that. But like, how do we tie? What could we make it look like? How can we tie all that in together where we're providing meaning for those elderly members of the congregation? We're utilizing the church vans that sit there 6 days a week, right? And we're providing a service to these individuals who need the transportation. I don't know. It just like seems like there's a church on every corner. I live in the woods, man. I pass like 8 churches going up my mountain. It's no joke. And there's like every one of them has a van out there.
That's a beautiful vision. I like that. I like that. Right now, we have a very small handful of just individuals who are retired who will actually come pick up our residents and take them to doctor's appointments. And they are amazing. And I need more, but they would love to jump on that one. Yeah. We have a group of volunteers that drive our van to Mana. And so that staff doesn't have to. But boy, that would be beautiful to see something bigger.
Yeah, like an overall, like an organization that's connected with each of these churches. How much were we talking about? Gas? You know? What does that cost? If each church took 1 day a week, I'll take Monday, Bob's taking Tuesday, Sue's going to take Wednesday, spend $50 in gas, $50 a week, you know? I think it could solve a significant problem in this community.
Yeah,
Crazy. I always have crazy ideas.
I like it.
I like it.
So have us back in a few weeks, and let's talk more about that. Heck yeah.
In a few weeks, Bob, I will have my toes in the sand of the Pacific coast, the Pacific Ocean.
Man.
I told the Cara that's going with us, I don't care how cold the Pacific Ocean is, this little skinny body
You're going to do it.
is
Jumping in.
taking a plunge.
That's funny.
I do not care. What about you guys with the church? What are the next steps? How can people get involved? What kind of support do you guys need
Okay.
to get this thing kind of like launched?
We're I think the easy answer is go on Facebook, look up Holy Resurrection Orthodox Mission.
Or the amazing Bob Cummings.
You do a good Caleb.
Very
man.
good.
I've
That
been
was
doing it.
really
I've been
good.
doing it for a year and a half, man.
Okay, show me a Caitlin.
Not
Do
yet.
Caitlin.
I can't yet.
All right. Go to Facebook. Look up Holy Resurrection Orthodox Mission. Keep listening to this podcast because you're going to have me back on sometime soon. All right. We're gonna talk about. I'm going to take out some ads in the papers, let people know what we're doing, and again, I mean, the goal is to we're going to be a service to this community. When Archbishop Daniel was here, when he was talking about pathways, he said, why reinvent the wheel? We're already doing stuff here, and rather than doing our own thing, he wants us to support pathways. So we're going to. So no, the quick answer is pay attention, and then you're going to start seeing our name here and there. You're going to, we're going to start meeting right next to Folkmoot Center on Sunday
cool.
mornings. Yeah, in one of the Haywood County School, I guess not the alternative center, but maybe alternative center, whatever it is, to the right of Folkmoot. We're going to start meeting there initially, and then as we grow, we're going to find somewhere else to meet. Because in Orthodox Church, we have icons, we have incense, we have bells, and it takes the whole sensory person in. So as we grow, we grow, but we're never gonna lose that vision.
I'm totally interested in checking it out.
Okay,
I am.
you would fit in just fine.
Would I?
You'd love it.
We have the
I
same
mean,
prayer rope.
With the
Yeah.
metal music?
Oh, yeah.
I'm totally interested in checking it out.
I was gonna say Kievian chant. So if I can say bring one thing up before we close. I don't know where we are time wise, but as much wonderful stuff as Pathways does, I also want to bring up the reality of why they do what they do, and the reality of why Holy Orthodox or Holy Resurrection Orthodox Church can do what it does. This past Thursday we had a memorial service at Pathways because we had 4 people recently who died through drug addiction or through the homeless, the street lifestyle. One young lady, I think maybe 25, committed suicide. And my understanding is that as she was dying, she was yelling to the EMTs, "Don't help me! I deserve to die. I don't deserve to live." And that just should not be. So, as we had this memorial service, at one point, the gentleman leading it requested people just to call out the names of people that they know who have died through drug addiction, opioid overdose, suicide, whatever. And then every time someone called a name, he rang a bell. And I began by saying the name of my brother, Steve, and he rang the bell. And someone else said a name, they rang the bell, and the bell kept ringing and ringing and ringing. And so Pathways is here because of that, because we don't want to have memorials like that anymore. And our church is here because of that. We don't want to have memorials like that anymore. And that's why you do what you do. That's why Caleb and Caitlin do what they do. Because I'm tired of hearing people die. So, but yeah, I mean, I say that to say that Pathways, were it not for Pathways, more people would be in the position of why we had the memorial last Thursday. So,
And outside of like what Pathways is doing, it's the people who are inside there. You two, the other staff that you have on board, Sheriff Christopher, right? Like truly invested for the people, right? Truly invested to prevent that bell from ringing. That's what it boils down to. I think that's why we all do what we do, you know?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I mean, I'll be completely honest with you guys. Like, I rebel against all kinds of shit. I don't follow the normal path, right?
You fit
Are you
right in with
really?
us.
Are you serious?
You could get a job at Pathways.
I lay my own path, and so many of these organizations or governing bodies, they put more barriers in place than they allow access, right? And if we could all just circle back to the way that Caleb meets those individuals with unconditional love, the way that the Orthodox just accepts and loves everyone. Like we make it things too difficult on our own. If we could just like simplify it, right? It's easy. It's so easy. But and that's why I got out of like the school stuff, is just kind of like something I do for a hobby now, because there's too many rules and stuff. You know, it's just a hobby. Just make it easy, make it simple. Love people, right?
Yeah.
Be kind. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Forgive. It's not hard. We make our life difficult. And then in turn, like these agencies and governing bodies, it's just like this momentum. And I don't know, it gets frustrating sometimes.
I hear you. I'm all for recovery always. So
There you are. Well, listen, guys, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a pleasure to get to know you. Let's go ahead and like throw out how to get in touch with the work that you guys are doing one more time. If people are interested in coming out and being of service, if people are interested in donating some dollars, if people are interested in
Donating coffee.
so I'm gathering.
no kombucha though.
We have a lot of groceries, but we always run out of coffee, creamer, and sugar.
Always.
The essentials.
The Holy Trinity.
For Pathways, if you want to know more about us, you can go to our website, which is haywoodpathwayscenter.org, and we're also on Facebook. Or you can just call us or come by.
Your stuff, Bob, one more time.
Okay, for Holy,
You're going to get this right.
well, yeah, we just
We've only-
named it
we
like
only
3
named it 3
days
days
ago,
ago.
all right? So for Holy Resurrection Orthodox Church, I just set up a Facebook page last night about 10 o'clock. So if you find it there, fine. If not, then they can contact you, Steve.
Okay.
And they get in touch with me, right?
Yes. Once again, it's Bob. The amazing Bob Cummings.
I've never called myself the amazing Bob Cummings.
I'm sure you
No,
heard
you're
it.
cute and adorable.
Well, thanks. I love my wife.
He told me that when I
That he
first
told you
met
that
him.
he is cute and adorable?
Yes, he did.
All
He said,
right.
I'm cute and adorable. That's what he said.
Well, before I married Sue, I had someone, I needed someone to tell me that. So I would look in the mirror every day and say, Bob, you are cute and adorable. So I heard it every day. And then when I married her, after I told her that I was
I had
that,
to
then-
continue it for him.
Yes, I mean, yeah. Nobody else told me that, so
Sure.
I love you, Steve. Thank you for.
Anytime, man.
Let me
Listen,
be embarrassed.
it's been great to get to know you guys. The work that y'all are doing out there is phenomenal. Please let me, NC Raw, this podcast know if we can support anything that you guys are doing, fundraising, events, things like that. You need to get the word out. Do not hesitate to send it my way. You got my email address, I think.
Thank you.
What's beeping? Bob, it's Caleb. He heard us talking about him. But yeah, do not hesitate to let us kind of spread the word. And I'm going to close the show out. I got a YouTube video of Bob teaching Kung Fu.
Oh, no, you do not.
I don't. Tell me a Bob story real quick. Give me a funny Bob story.
One of our favorite pastimes, this is from our previous round of life, is that we taught women's self-defense courses. And it was really fun because I'd get a room full of 20 women and I'd teach them how to beat up men, and then they'd all need my husband in the
You
crotch
test them, yeah.
repeatedly. It was great.
I was padded, but still.
Yeah. 20 or 30 times. There's no
Ow.
turning back.
20,
Bob.
30, nothing, we're talking like a few hundred. It was
Oh,
great.
gosh.
It was great.
4 scenarios per person. If we had 20 people, that's 80 scenarios I had to do, being absolutely beaten up by angry women.
That's what makes a good marriage.
Yeah,
It's good
Yeah.
marriage.
I
There
love
you
it.
I'm very docile now.
Thank you guys for
Thank you,
coming out
Steve.
tonight.
Thank you
I
so
had
much.
a blast. Y'all are a ton of fun. I'm gonna come out there and kick it with you sometime
Heck yeah,
soon.
do it. Do it.
Later, y'all. Thank you. Thank you.